I think about in the United States, like every year, 50,000 people die from suicide.
Maybe it was the burden. I don't want to burden my parents with my issues or my problems or what's going on with me.
I think gender plays a huge, huge role. Males are 4 times more likely to commit suicide than females. And they're 7 times more likely to use a firearm to commit suicide than females.
Today's guest is Sterling Brown, a therapist in St. George, Utah, who's on a mission to change the way that small town Utah talks about mental health. He lost a classmate to suicide. He was skeptical of therapy himself as a teenager, and now he is dedicating his life to making sure other people don't suffer in silence the way that so many do. This is a conversation about stigma, about strength, and about what it actually takes to ask for help. Well, welcome today, Sterling. It's
Thank
nice to
you.
have you here.
Great to be here.
So, we're going to just dive right in. So, first, I want you to start off by just introducing yourself, who you are, maybe a little background, and then we'll get right in.
Yeah, well, I'm Sterling Brown. I'm in St. George, Utah. That's where we have the podcast. And I've been in the mental health field for about 6 years. And I'm just starting out as a therapist, just starting to see clients and trying to help people, especially with suicide, eating disorders, and just depression, anxiety, and with anything in between, really. So, yeah,
So let's go back to your childhood because that plays a role into what you're
for
doing
sure.
today for
For
sure.
sure.
So what were you like growing up and what was the community that you came from like?
Yeah. Um, I I love the community I grew up in. I had an amazing family, super supportive. And I noticed that in this community in Cedar City, Utah, right? It's a rural area, and there's a certain mentality and attitude that we have around mental health when it comes to wanting to get help
Mhm.
and just even knowing the resources, or even that that's something that helps when you're feeling kind of low, that that's something people do, even
Mhm.
is to go see a therapist. And so I didn't really even know about this whole world, like, I mean, therapy has kind of been trending recently. Um, and so I didn't know about this world until as a teenager. I was kind of just thrown into it. I kind of saw a therapist as a teenager. And ever since that moment, I just didn't like therapy. I didn't like the idea of it. Just kind of gave me the ick. And just kind of like just a gross thing. It felt like kind of like this manipulation. It felt like kind of psychological control and like this expert needing to tell someone how to live their life.
Mhm.
And so this thought pattern that I've had about therapy kind of being just kind of gross, I thought maybe a lot of other people in my area have the same idea that I have. And I want to be a therapist that people can go to that maybe are very skeptical about therapy and feel awkward talking to someone about these like deep things. And so that's something that really pushed me to want to go in this field. But yeah, that's
Just a,
yeah,
maybe a misunderstanding on your part about
yeah.
what therapy really was for. Because maybe you didn't quite understand it. Am I
Yeah,
hearing that right?
so yeah, my mom kind of threw me in there to try to like kind of fix me when honestly I was
Were you broken?
experiencing a lot of the like traumatic events from just from being in my house at
Okay.
the time.
Okay.
And so there's some issues at the time. And so being being thrown a therapy didn't didn't feel helpful for me at the
And maybe
time.
because it wasn't your idea. Maybe
Yeah.
because you didn't quite you
Yeah.
didn't quite understand what it was for in the first place.
Mhm.
And then maybe
Yeah.
like just being kind of thrust into it, you're like, whoa, whoa,
Yeah, for
whoa.
example, you guys talk about domestic abuse a lot on the show,
Mhm.
right? And so it's kind of this kind of gaslighting, making someone feel like they were the issue, right?
Instead of
And
what
kind of like you
happened.
need to be fixed, you need to change who you are in order for this relationship to work. When in reality, it was kind of the opposite, right?
Like there needs to be sometimes change on both parts, or maybe one party is the problem. You
Yeah,
know what I
exactly.
mean? Like
Yeah, for
I because
sure.
I think we always have our own role in every
Yeah.
situation, whether we're feeding off of somebody's energy or
Oh, for
words
sure.
or how we're feeling by what they're saying to us.
Yeah.
But then there's also this like, oh, okay, like I'm trying my best and this person is not.
Yeah, that's like a common dialogue in marriage, right? It's like you both have to make it work together. You do 50%, the other person.
Yeah.
But
But I don't think it's 50-50.
someone's doing zero or
Yeah. I don't
yeah,
think it's 50-50
or
because
negative percentage.
I think it's 100-100 if you both give your best.
Yeah.
Then if the other person's failing to put their all in or something's going on and they can't, it's being picked up by the other partner. And I've been married for 26 years. So this is
Yeah.
just my little experience from
Yeah,
my
for
my
sure.
time. But I think that if you look at it like I'm gonna do my best in my part and you're with somebody who wants that for themselves too, that's where the true magic can happen.
Yeah, for sure.
But relationships are tough even in the best situations. So
Yeah.
so here you are,
Yeah.
a therapist now,
Yeah.
from anti-therapy to
Yeah.
becoming a therapist. So, one year away, is that right? From becoming a therapist yourself? Are you that
Yeah, I've
close? Or are you
been
closer?
seeing clients for about a year,
Okay.
but I'm still technically an intern. So
Okay.
yeah.
So what changed that made you decide towards that? Just wanting to understand it? Because that's like a big thing to do just to try and understand
Yeah.
therapy. To
Yeah, that's a
become
good
one.
question. No, I thought I had a good personality for the job. And as a teenager, when I had this therapist, I thought to myself, I think I could do a better job at this job that you're doing than you could at this age that I was.
Mm,
And so that really pushed me to wanna learn what it was about, and just this curiosity really spiked in me. And psychology is very interesting, right?
yeah.
Something that really pushed me to go into this field though is just attitudes, like I said, in rural areas in Utah and the Mountain West. Just this kind of Wild West mentality that you kind of have to like be an independent person, work hard. And I love those values of working hard, but I don't know if we always instill the value of like asking for help.
Hmm.
And so I think that's something that I've I've wanted to promote
Yeah.
more.
And I like that. I like that because in my house,
Mhm.
so I'm the second of 13 children. So in
Yeah.
my house, we all helped out. There was no
Mhm.
way that house was functioning if we weren't all pitching in,
Yeah.
right? Like, and I was,
There's
because I was,
13 kids?
yeah, and I
Wow.
was one of the oldest. So there was always small children running around, and we just
Mhm.
had a younger buddy. And
Yeah.
like, that was kind of like, we would help take care of our younger buddy.
Yeah. Wow.
And like, everyone has their own thoughts and feelings about it, but that was all I knew. I
Yeah.
didn't know any different. I was never a single child. I was never, I
Yeah.
never just had one sibling. I mean, I guess I did when I was born, but
Mhm.
quickly after that, they kept coming.
Yeah.
And I always looked at it as a positive because I learned so much about being a mother, about how a
Yeah.
household runs. Because when my mom would have a baby, I would kind of step in and be mom. And
Mhm.
I thought it was such a beautiful experience for myself because I learned so much about how to be a mom and how to be an adult and how, how to do all these different things. And so I think that like it's kind of the same thing. Like you can go real hard one way or real hard the other way, but when you ask for help,
Mhm.
like everybody needs help at some point in their life. Nobody can
Yeah,
do everything on their own forever.
for sure. I think it's
And it's
easier to be that person helping, be that hero in someone's life. It feels better, honestly, than to be the person that's feels
asking.
weak, that
Yeah.
feels inadequate.
Yeah.
Yeah. But in reality, like you need both sides of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And the humility to ask for help
Yeah, for
is
sure.
is hard, but at the same time, the payoff makes it totally worth it because you're
Yeah.
like, wow, okay, now we can get this done and then we can move forward with whatever comes
Yeah.
next. And I've always tried to teach my kids that like I do want you to be fiercely independent and do as much as you can on your own, but I also want you to know that if it's too much or too hard or you feel like you need some support or help, just ask us.
Mhm.
Because I feel like it's actually a strength to be able to ask for help.
Mhm.
And I think that sometimes when you don't, it's almost kind of a weakness because you're just trying to fight through and do it yourself when there's people that are probably willing and able to do it that are near.
For sure, yeah. The research on suicide, for example, like some of the 3 points of that is the big part of it is burdensomeness. That's a
Mm,
huge factor in people wanting to, die by suicide is feeling like they don't belong, like they're a burden, and that they have the means to do so. Those are the 3 that make it
mm,
lethal. And so that feeling like you belong to something, in order
mhm.
to belong to something, you actually have to reach out for help, right?
Yeah.
And feeling like
Go
a
to a meeting, go to an event,
yeah,
go like it takes action. Yeah.
takes action for sure. And feeling like this burden is sometimes the reason why people don't ask for help is because they feel like if they do, they're gonna burden someone else.
Mhm.
Mm.
When most people, at least most people that I surround myself with,
Mhm.
if I ask for help, they're quick and willing, and it's not a burden. And
Mm.
it's like, oh, I'm so glad you asked
Yeah.
because most people want to help others.
Yeah.
In my experience,
Yeah, for sure.
there's always people that are like, no,
Mhm.
but I think most people do want to help. I think we all kind of inherently have that within us to want to. I That's why I think community is so important
Mhm.
too. I think that creating spaces where people can get together,
Mhm.
and I mean, it's why there's support groups too.
Yeah.
Like we just had a man on yesterday, and his wife passed away in April, and he went to this support group before she passed while she was in hospice, and he didn't get it. And
Mhm.
then he went again after she had passed, and he was like, "Oh, I get it now.
Yeah.
I need to be here." And those people all showed up for him for different events since
Yeah.
she passed, and so he gets to feel this beautiful community of people that love and care about him, and they all have one thing in common that they are experiencing grief together,
Mm.
which is kind of a thing that we don't want to like go to a group for, but the fact that it's there to help support in that time, I think is really, really important.
Mm. Yeah.
Okay, so you you said you wanted to create a therapeutic experience that you could have had as a teenager. So what would that have looked like for you if you walked into that office? How would your experience have been different if you were your own therapist? You know,
Yeah.
you were the therapist.
Yeah. I think having that humility in the room that you don't know all the answers and you don't even know the person's situation fully and you don't even need to know the situation fully, but you're just there to listen and not overthink it, not trying to create some diagram or trying to put them in some box or category.
Mm,
I really just think there's this beauty in just simply listening and sitting with someone. And it's kind of hard to for advertising purposes, therapists like to have these different acronyms and they throw these different diagnoses and labels. And those are all great and there's some truth to all of it, of course. But I just think the healing comes from just that person to person connection,
mm,
right?
for sure.
Yeah,
That's why we always talk about it's okay if you don't like the first therapist you go to, keep going until you find somebody that you can feel like that
for
with.
sure.
Because
Yeah.
it's not one size fits all. Just like I'm not best friends with everyone I meet.
Mm-hmm.
I'm never going to pour my heart out to everyone I meet. So it's the same with the therapist too.
Yeah, for
Like,
sure.
don't give up because the first one didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
Just keep seeking it out till you find the right one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So something personal brought you into this work.
Yeah.
And I think it's connected to a loss you've experienced. Let's go there because I
Okay.
think that that's kind of ties into like your real
Yeah.
passion for the group of people that you really want to serve.
Yeah, and I think this story, I think it's everyone has a sort of story like this. It's not super it's emotional for me because it happened in high school. So my classmate, he told me he looted the day before he died by suicide. He looted like you're not going to see me tomorrow. I didn't really know what he meant by it at the time, and he was just gone the next day. And I mean, we weren't super close, but just that idea of having a classroom where one more person was gone really, really impacted
Mm,
me, right? And that definitely got me thinking about why was it him that chose that? Why wasn't anyone else in this classroom? And there's a lot of things that we've done, like maybe in the state of Utah to try to prevent suicide in high school and in older years as well, older adults. But I just I find that the healing just comes in that therapeutic relationship when you
mm,
actually say you need help, you're saying you have suicidal thoughts, and having someone to talk to about it without any judgment. But yeah, this classmate of mine, yeah, we just he graduated. When he graduated, his parents lifted up a picture of him, and we all, clapped like we would, even though we knew that, he wasn't there with our class. Um, and I think that story is, I think everyone has someone that's passed
mhm.
away by suicide, maybe a relative, maybe a friend, right? And I think about in the United States, like every year, 50,000 people die from suicide every year.
Ooh,
And you think about that if there's like a foreign invasion in the United States and they took out 50,000 people, we would all be talking about it,
right.
right? It would be all over the news, it'd be everywhere. But the thing with suicide is it's so silent
Mhm.
because it's kind of hard to talk about. There's people that are grieving it, the
It's
family
very
members.
painful.
It's very painful.
Yeah.
And it's kind of hard to reconcile. Sometimes the funerals are kind of hard because there's even some bitterness with family members. Like, why didn't you choose to go through the pain and suffering that you were dealing with? Like, why did you choose to let go when you did?
Mm.
Um, and so it is a hard topic, but it is important to talk about because it is so like the mass amount of people is so high, even though it's scattered throughout the
I
United
mean, it's like
States.
1,000 a week. What does that break down to?
Yeah, let me do the
You know
math
what I
on that.
mean? Like, it's
Yeah,
a lot.
for
More than
sure.
100 a day.
Yeah, for sure.
It's almost what? It's like 150 people a day. That's crazy. That's so sad. As
Yeah.
someone like I lost a cousin to suicide, and it was
Yeah.
very, very hard.
Mhm.
And you never stop thinking about them.
Mm.
Whew. You don't stop thinking about them because for me, I feel things very deeply. I'm very empathetic, and I can't get out of my mind. Like, what was he feeling at that time that he couldn't? He
Mm.
didn't. I mean, he had very loving and supportive parents. He was very close with his family, but something was going on within him that he wasn't talking about, that he wasn't expressing to the people around him that loved him. And it was probably, like you said at the very beginning, one of those three things. And I'm like, maybe it was the burden. I don't want to burden my parents with my issues or my problems or what's going on with me. Where if I could say one thing to everybody out there, nobody feels burdened by you
Mhm.
telling them that you're having a hard time.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I think, yeah, I kind of what you're describing, like all those like thoughts and questions that like you had to like try to figure out like why and like was it something I did? Was there something we could have done? You know, just that grieving of a family member that yeah, that died. Another thing, like they even try to change the wording from commit suicide to die by suicide because commit is kind of harder for the family to grieve. But when it's like, let's not focus on the suicide, let's focus on their life,
Yeah.
right? Let's focus on like that they were our family and that, you know, yes, they died, but we're grieving their death, not how they died, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when we're grieving the loss of having them here with us still, because he
Yeah.
was such a light and such a beautiful part of their family.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was just gone. And I mean, it is very hard. And it's something that like, I think that when you're in that state, you don't think about all the things that come after. You're just thinking about what you're going to do and how you're going to do it almost. You're not trying. Because I think if you did go down that path and started thinking about everybody that's going to be affected, that might change your mind a little bit.
Yeah, I'm curious. So you grew up with 13, there's 13 kids in your family?
Yeah, I have 12 siblings.
Did you grow up in a small town?
I grew up in San Diego.
In San Diego.
Yeah,
Oh, interesting.
yeah.
Oh.
So, and my my cousin lived just a couple hours north of us, and I just remember when we were all there, and it was like you want to celebrate their life,
Mhm.
but there's just an underlying tone there. I mean, everybody that and most of the people that are there know what happened and how it happened, and so there's this underlying tone there, and this like kind of like a heaviness
Yeah, it feels
because like
different.
you said, it's a really heavy topic to talk about, and it's a really heavy topic to like feel too, like to feel the weight of what had happened to him.
Mhm.
And so we just tried to surround with love, and we all just showed up and just wanted to provide as much love and support as we could for his parents and his siblings that were still dealing with all of that, and then had to go back in the home where it happened too, and that to me was is a big thing. It's
Mhm.
just a big thing. And so I think this is very important for us to talk about. And like we told you earlier, we're doing the Voice of Resilience project where we deal with a lot of veterans, and that's a pretty decent group of people that are struggling with this topic too.
Yeah.
Let's see. So that loss becomes the fuel for you to figure out what,
Figure out what. I think
because it fueled you.
yeah, figuring out how I can channel myself in this field to actually make a difference and not just be like some therapist influencer that's trying to make a lot of money off people and feeling like I can lower the number of suicides and kind of make that a focus of mine to do
Yeah.
that. And
Because
so,
one or two is better than those
hmm
people being gone, right? Like
yeah,
whatever impact we can make. I think sometimes I like that you're thinking this way because I think sometimes we feel like, well, there's only so much I can do, but what you do matters.
yeah,
And making an impact in people's lives matters because maybe something you say or do in those sessions or on this podcast will help somebody, as another veteran has told us, stay alive longer. Kind of think a little bit more about that and know like you're not a burden to those people that you would ask for help. Those brothers and sisters and family members and
yeah.
military friends, because those the in the military, the men that they're with are their brothers. Your brothers are always there for you. I mean, I know they come home with a lot, and there's a lot heavier things that we're not talking about, but I think that hopefully helping them understand you're not a burden and there's always support and help for you. I think that's one of the biggest messages that I want to
Yeah.
keep saying.
Yeah, I'm not a veteran, so I don't want to like speak on behalf of veterans, but I do know that sometimes having that acceptance of your death and then coming home and losing that support system of your group can just
Mhm.
be such a challenge.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because now you feel like maybe a lot of people around you don't quite understand, but your
Mhm.
brothers do, but they're all over the country sometimes. You don't
Yeah.
all just stay and live in the same place when you're done. So I think I agree with what you just said. Like, I think that's a big part of it because that's what I hear over and over in these interviews is it's hard when you come home and you're out because now you've been living in this military world for so long where you're told when to eat, what to eat, when you're allowed to have free time, when you're not, all the things to now you just have full freedom and
Yeah.
there's no structure when you get out and you have to create that for yourself and kind of assimilate into a whole new world.
Mhm.
And if you've been in the military for 20 years and been to war a couple of times, like that's very different than the world you've been living in. So I think all of that could play a part.
Yeah. Something I'd be curious about too is I know with like PTSD, and I'll be curious to see what it's like for you interviewing all these veterans. PTSD sometimes, well, I'd say all the time, it is so hard to articulate what you've been through because it's such a visceral sensory experience in your body of those events. Some
It's also
describe it as
very foreign to
flashbacks.
most civilians that have never been to that
Yeah,
in that situation.
yeah. And people describe it in different ways, but it is so hard to describe that that trauma that they've experienced.
The intensity of it too.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, PTSD is one of those things that it's so layered. It's so nuanced and it's so specific for each person that it's not like, oh, this is what PTSD looks like for everybody. It's so different for everyone. So that is something that takes some navigating to kind of start to dig into, I would think. So, let's see. So when you talk about the suicide epidemic in rural Utah, what are we actually talking about? Like, what do the numbers look like, and why is this region specifically so affected, you think?
I love that question. Yeah. So if you look at the United States, right? If you look at the clusters, you'll see in the Mountain West region, super high clusters in the rural areas of the Mountain West, like dramatically higher in these rural Mountain West areas. There's a little bit in West Virginia area. There's some little speckles other places. A lot in Alaska, right? And so when I saw this map originally, I was really curious about this. Like what is the cause? I know there's so many factors. It's hard to pin down and you wouldn't want to pin down, especially when it's such an emotional,
Mm.
experience to have like a loved one, for example, go through something like that. Um, but I wanted to understand it better. I had a professor who I just thought was wrong about the reasons he thought that the Mountain West had higher rates. He said that it was perfectionism and higher elevation. And growing up in a small town in southern Utah, I just didn't connect with that
Mm,
because he wasn't factoring in attitudes that people had about getting help. He didn't factor in um, firearm accessibility.
mhm,
He didn't factor in, I say, yeah, the biggest is attitudes, but even another big one is gender, right? You actually find more men are in the Mountain West in Alaska than anywhere else in the United States. And there's also more men in West Virginia. That happens to correlate too. So I think gender plays a huge, huge role. Males are 4 times more likely to commit suicide than females. And they're 7 times more likely to use a firearm to commit suicide than females. And it shouldn't surprise us because we live in a society and a culture where men aren't really taught how to express their emotions.
mm,
And there's a competitive spirit about being a man.
mhm,
And sometimes it's makes you look weak to show your emotion.
mhm.
And
Or you think it does. Let's
you
just
think
go
you
there.
think it does, right? And you need a mask. You need to mask that.
Mhm,
You can mask it with humor. You can mask it with um, looking tough. You can mask it by all sorts of ways. But we're taught early on to mask our emotions and not to need to reach out for help. If
mm,
you reach out for help, that makes you look weak. And so I think that that's something that I want to channel. I know that 80%, there's an 80%, 20% ratio of female to male in my generation because therapy has become um, more female dominated. 70% of clients are female that go to therapy, and 30% of clients are male because females are willing to ask for help
mm.
and they're not masking, they show more of their emotion, which is such a strength, right? It's because it
I think it's
prevents a lot of,
biological too.
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things for sure. I don't think it's just being socialized for
Right.
sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. Keep
No, you're
going.
good. No, there's a lot that goes in that
Okay.
for sure. I have a twin sister, for example, and so growing up with her, I mean, you could see that it's definitely biological too.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that women are told it's okay for us to be emotional. It's okay for us to cry. It's okay. All the things you said that are no-nos for men are what we're allowed to do. We're allowed to ask for help because we are, like, I'm not going to say the weaker species or the weaker gender, I'm not going to say all that, but I'm just saying
Yeah.
like I rely on my husband for a lot. I'm a very capable person,
Yeah.
but I rely on him for a lot. And I think that that's just kind of like natural
Mhm.
is to rely on men for things.
Yeah.
Like it's just, I might get in trouble for
I
saying
don't
this,
think you
but
should
I'm
ask your
okay.
husband for help. No, just kidding. You're
But
okay to what?
I said I might get in trouble for what I'm about to say, but I think that like there's a very difference, very big difference biologically in men and women, the way
For
our brains
sure.
work, the
Yeah.
way that we work, the way that
Mhm.
we do things, the way like I'm way more nurturing than my husband is, but he's better at other things.
Mhm.
So like we have our roles
Mhm.
and people will go, oh, gender roles. But I don't subscribe. Oh, women belong barefoot in the kitchen, taking care of the kids and cooking meals and
Are
cleaning the
you a
house.
trout wife?
Kind of, kind of. But I also think that I'm very capable of a lot of other
Yeah,
things too. And I'm
for
okay with
sure.
that. Like I was raised by a very capable mother and she showed me that I'm very capable. So I'll change my brakes myself if they need to be
Mhm.
changed because it'll happen sooner sometimes than if waiting for my husband to have the time to do it. So I'll just do that myself. And some might say, oh, that's very masculine of you. Well, it's okay for me to step into that when I need to, but I love being in my feminine energy and I love being a woman and I love everything that comes with that. And I think that if we can kind of get away from like, oh, it's not okay for men to act like this and women to act like this and kind of just know like, how do you find yourself to be your best self? Like, what does it take for you to be your best self? That's what we all need to do. And if you
Mhm.
need to cry, go cry. Find a safe person to cry to.
Mhm.
My husband cries to me sometimes, and he'll be okay with me saying this out loud. But he cries to me sometimes. My father was a crier, but my father was one of the most masculine, protective men I've ever met. So it's like it's not one or the other. You can shed tears and show emotion and be a very masculine man.
Mhm.
Maybe not at the same time, maybe at the same time. Who knows? But I think that we need to normalize everybody
Mhm.
having feelings because we all do
Yeah,
and showing them.
for sure. I like what you're saying. I think that, yeah, gender, I mean, sex is very different, the way we function. But the Gottmans did a research study on, like, on men, and because they study couples, right? Marriages and couples and how to make marriage work, the Gottman Institute does. And they did research on how many emotion words men and women say in like a minute when they're talking to each other. And it happens that women say 9 and men say 8. And so it's really not that
Nothing.
different as far as conversations and
Mhm,
emotions and affect
mhm.
and the way we express ourselves. Um, and I think that sometimes we've been socialized, and that's not all of it, it's biological too, to mask as men. So I think
Yeah,
that plays into it a little bit, but that's just one factor. There's so many factors,
yeah.
right?
And I think like feeling safe in a relationship or in a partnership or like if you're with your therapist and you feel safe with your therapist, you're probably more willing to show those feelings and show those emotions as a man. I'm spitballing here. I'm not a man. I don't know, but I would think like if you're in a place where you feel comfortable, I feel like you would feel like you could let your guard down a little bit and expose yourself to the point to where you could kind of receive some more help, especially if you're going to a therapist and seeking that. I would think, is that true?
Yeah, yeah, I guess it just depends on the person. I mean, yeah, I don't
And why they're there.
know. Yeah, it depends on the person.
So, what is it about rural communities, the culture, the geography, the religion, the economics that creates this environment? And what are the factors that compound on each other? So, what do you think? I mean, I have my own opinions, but I want to hear what
Yeah.
you think about what is really affecting these people in the rural
Yeah, I
communities.
think a huge one is guns. So in the Mountain West, you have probably the loosest gun laws out there. So I think guns are a huge thing. Think about this, okay? In the state of Utah, it is 4 times more likely that you will kill yourself than someone else kill you.
Oh, wow.
So, and I'm all for the Second Amendment, all that, but just think about in that term when you see a gun that's out, just think it's more likely that I will kill myself with that gun than someone else kills me.
Yeah.
And so I get we see guns as to protect ourselves sometimes, but really you got to lock it up and you got to be humble enough to keep it in a safe when you don't know the code, when you're in a not a good
Heightened mental state, maybe.
stable spot. Yeah.
Yeah. I would think like my opinion might be a little bit like the isolation could play a part in that too.
Oh, 100%.
I know that a lot of people who live rural like living rural because there's not people around, but I also know that we need
Yes.
people in our lives.
Yes.
And so not having any people
Yeah.
might play a part in that as well. Just
Huge.
like being completely isolated and
Yeah.
alone with your thoughts and maybe they're not healthy thoughts and
100%.
I
Yeah.
don't know that altitude.
Altitude, I don't know because when you have mountains, it does isolate you more,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you have to
That's true. It's a longer way to
you
get
got
to
little towns and little
civilization
valleys in different spots,
and maybe one way in and out.
one way in and out. Yeah. And so I think
I was thinking of altitude as like the altitude actually affecting the person's state, not the place in
yeah.
the
Because
mountains.
yeah, your brain gets less oxygen if you're
Yeah,
up higher.
thinner air.
But I guess
Maybe.
I'm not
I
buying
mean,
it because you have places all over the world that, for example, I don't think that suicide rates are high on in
in
South
mountain
America in the
cities
mountains.
that are high. Yeah,
I think it's different.
that's a good point. That's a good
You
point.
know?
Let's see. What are the specific barriers, political, religious, cultural, that make people distrust therapy in rural communities? And how do you address those barriers with your clients?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think religion really is a big one. I think when people feel like there's a secular religion trying to move people away from their belief system, I think that sometimes that can be a barrier. I also think oh, yeah, I think the trendiness of therapy also think that there's money involved. That can be in rural communities where so much of the work is this industrial sort of blue collared work. It's kind of hard for people to buy in this idea of sitting with someone that's not working and just talking and thinking that their money's worth it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe sometimes some of those people in rural places don't have the same abundance that people that live in larger areas where they have more access
Yeah,
to more
maybe.
work.
It depends on the area, though. I mean,
That's true.
like some areas are booming, so I don't know.
You said you want people to be able to trust therapy despite those attitudes. What would you say directly to someone who thinks therapy is a scam or someone who would never reach out on their own?
I would say it is a scam, but I want you to be able to trust me with it. No, I think uh I'm trying to think. I think I would say that you don't need to trust therapy as an organization, or
Mm.
you don't need to trust all these different models per se. You don't need to trust these diagnoses and these boxes that therapists put people in. You don't even have to trust the whole medicine, psychiatric stuff. But I think that you can trust someone sitting with you and listening to you. And I think that if you have a therapist that lets you guide the conversation rather than trying to have you go a certain direction in the conversation, I think you can trust them.
Yeah. Because intuitively, I think we all know.
Yeah.
Deep inside, I'm a very intuitive person.
Yeah.
And when something is unsettling, I'm like, okay, I'm trusting my gut.
Yeah.
And it's always right.
Yeah.
And so I think that once we can, because I think sometimes you get away from that. And when you can tap back into that, and start to trust yourself more and trust those feelings more, then I
Mhm.
think that can put you in a better place to start to go, okay, I can talk about this and I can maybe answer some of my own questions just with somebody who's willing to listen and maybe offer like little things for me to extra think about, like drop little nuggets in while I'm processing that kind of help me process further.
Yeah.
That's how I think of therapy as a way
No,
for
I
me
like
to
that.
like work through it with somebody who can kind of help, not necessarily guide me down this path, but give me little things to look for that help me learn those lessons and make those changes that I want to make.
Mhm.
Does that sound accurate to you?
Yeah, that sounds accurate.
So what does it finally look like when somebody asks for help? What changes in them when they take that first step? These we're still talking about the rural people. So when they finally do come and get some help, what do you think it is that changes something for them to get the help?
Get the help. Oh my goodness. Yeah, what makes people in rural areas
Yeah,
get
like if
help?
someone's rural and they've
Mhm.
maybe been resistant or maybe they have
Yeah.
don't know people that have been to therapy, but they decide to go to therapy themselves, what do you think it would be that would kind of help them to
Yeah. This is gonna be a vast generalization, but I
okay.
think that when people see the behavior of themselves or individuals that is like not working. So like emotions and thoughts and feelings, like I don't think that necessarily people in those areas want to dive deep into a Freudian psychotherapy to figure out my soul and figure out who I am. But I think what encourages them to go into therapy is see like this will help me to stay sober. This will help me to overcome some of these suicidal thoughts I have. This will help me with an eating disorder, and this will help me my kid, or this will save my marriage. I think when there's something a goal that they can get to, I think
Mhm.
that's going to be a huge factor in them going to therapy.
Yeah, like maybe something that they've tried to work on themselves and they just can't
Mhm.
break through. They know that there's something that they need to work on, and they
Mhm.
just don't know where to start, and they're desperate.
Yeah, desperate. I
I
think
mean,
we'll
not
do
to say you have to be
I
desperate for
think we'll do
therapy, but
anything if we're desperate, yeah.
I think a lot of people wait till they're desperate because I think
Mhm.
most of us try to do it all on our own as much as we
Yeah.
can. But I think especially people who have PTSD or suicidal ideation even have a hard time getting there.
Well, and that's something I like about Irene GBT is because you can before you get desperate, you can kind of ask certain things and see where you're at. Um, Lots of questions you can ask this AI. And obviously, it's not there to be this emotional support, but at the beginning, when you're just completely lost, it can kind of ground you at the
Yeah.
beginning, right?
Yeah, and it can be a little bit of an emotional support too, I think,
Yeah.
especially with like if you're in this crisis mode and you're just like, I don't even know where to begin.
Mhm.
I think, like you were saying, I think that's a good place to start, just to start identifying maybe some of the things that are happening because you feel my life is chaos. I'm unhappy. This relationship feels off, or this situation feels off, and you just can't put your finger on why. I
Mhm.
think that's where Irene GPT can
Yeah.
really help people.
And we were talking about this earlier. Something I've noticed that a lot of people before they come into therapy, they'll use AI as a way to try to get emotional support initially, right? To try to figure out where they are, what they need to do, what they need to say, maybe in a text or something. And I really like Irene GBT better than a lot of these different AIs because it actually gives you actual concrete things you need to do instead of just giving you nuanced
Yeah.
Reddit scrape data answers.
And healthy. Like she'll
Yeah,
always steer you in the right direction to
for
make
sure.
a healthy response, a
Yeah.
healthy decision, a healthy like so that
Mhm.
you're not furthering the abuse or damage that has been done to you or that you've done to yourself.
Yeah.
So she's always going to kind of call you out cuz I actually typed in one time I just thought of like the nastiest thing I could say to someone and I said I'm sending my husband this message and I just typed it in cuz I'm testing. I want her to stick to what I've, you
Yeah.
know, what like we have those guardrails for a reason.
Mhm.
And she's like, let's just take a breath for a second. She's even had me say, why don't you go outside and take a walk and then come back and let's talk
Mm.
when things are heightened. So we've done a lot of testing ourselves on her to see like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, she is. She's like that good trusted friend that's always gonna be like, look, take a deep breath. It's okay.
Mhm.
Let's bring that nervous system down a little bit, regulate a little bit, and
Mhm.
then let's start talking because then we can think clearly and process
Yeah.
better.
Yeah, I asked a question on Irene GBT about suicide, for example, and I noticed when I asked her on different AI, it asked me follow-up questions like what's really going on, like all these things. But with Irene, it just said call this hotline. And I like that because it was like, yeah, call the hotline.
Yeah.
Like don't overthink it. Get the help you need.
Yeah. Don't keep going down the path with
Yeah.
chat GPT. Let's
Don't
maybe
say
like
any
talk
other.
to somebody who can really like help you get
Mhm.
some real support in that moment when life feels really like you're right here, you know?
Mhm.
Okay, so we how do we actually change the rural and like the rural people
Change
and
their
that whole
attitudes.
thing? What does awareness and prevention look like at a community level with
Oh,
people that live rural?
awareness and prevention. Oh my goodness. Man, I wish I knew all these
I
answers. They make me
I'm
feel
gonna give you
so
all the hard
good.
questions and you're gonna do your best.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think being I don't think changing attitudes is gonna really be helpful. Maybe I don't think I'm changing anyone's attitudes on this podcast around attitudes around mental health or anything like that. But I think, man, it really depends on the area, I guess. I think sometimes, can you repeat the question? It's a good question.
What does awareness and prevention look like at a community
Mm,
level? And if you don't know, that's okay.
yeah, that's hard. I think a big thing that's happened in rural areas, for example, is since COVID, telehealth has become big. So now you can see a therapist
At home.
anywhere in each state,
Yeah.
right? And so that's super helpful in bringing more awareness to mental health and having access. I personally don't believe that rural areas struggle with access. I believe that rural areas have an attitude where you need to work hard and asking for help is a huge challenge. And so I think trying to find ways where people don't feel like they're asking for help necessarily. I know support groups can be a good way to do that. I know churches sometimes can do that where you feel like you're serving people and not necessarily being like a burden on the
Mhm.
group. So I
Mhm.
think groups like that can be helpful.
I think I like that you said what you just said about access because I think it's important for people to know
Mm,
that they can have access from the comfort of their home because maybe some people don't want to come down or don't want to leave and they want to feel comfortable and feeling comfortable having that at your home but not having somebody in your home you know? Like that telehealth could be a way that a lot of people's lives could be saved as long as they know that that's an option for them. So if you could change one thing about how rural Utah communities talk about or don't talk about mental health and suicide, what would it be?
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I think I wish that we talked less about like disorders and more about just like suffering. So I know
Mm,
there's lots of different boxes we can kind of put people in with like ADHD, narcissist, PTSD. Um, but I really think just like human suffering is just so different for everyone that it is so
mm,
hard to categorize. And so I think throwing away those terms and really just knowing that someone's going to have a confidential conversation with someone and maybe feel some emotions in the conversation that are maybe hard to feel, I think would be a great, a better selling point than this medication will help you not act this way,
mm,
or if you just try this certain breathing skill, then you'll feel better. I don't think getting rid of the suffering is the solution, but I think connecting connection is the solution.
mm,
So finding that connection, I think, will be helpful in any area. But I think in rural areas, sometimes there's some barriers,
mm.
like literal hills and barriers
Yeah,
from getting there.
yeah. And connection, we've already said it on this podcast, but connection and community is so big, especially for people who are having a hard time.
Yes.
And even if you don't even talk about your problems, you just kind of put yourself around people to feel a little bit lifted by the people that you surround yourself with. Find good people to surround yourself, uplifting
Mm-hmm.
people. Not the people that sit around and talk about their problems, but the people that sit around and talk about how wonderful life is.
Mm-hmm.
Because we all have, like you said, we all have things,
Yeah.
labeled or not. We all have struggles in our life. And it's learning how to manage the struggles, not make them go away because there's always going to be struggles. That's life. Life is about challenges and overcoming,
Yeah.
challenges and persevering, challenges and using that to the word we like to use is resilience. Using that to create resilience in your life to become this better version of yourself because now you have all this experience and understanding and perspective that now you're here and you can say, "Oh, all of that was so that I could be here and I love my life, so it's all worth it." Even though it was hard,
Yeah.
because the most growth that we experience is through those struggles
Yeah.
if we choose to see it that way.
For sure. I think another way to sell therapy to to small towns, I guess, yeah, sell it to them, um, would be. I just lost my thought.
It'll come back.
Yeah, maybe it'll come back. It was so profound. Oh my goodness. Uh,
Mhm.
but yeah, like you're saying, yeah, finding meaning through. Oh, okay, that's what I was gonna say. Let me re-say that. So I think that yeah, selling therapy to rural communities. I think a big part of it is when you do have such a tight knit circle of people all in a small town and everyone knows everyone,
Mm,
sometimes the town gossip can get out of control,
mhm,
right? And so you can't trust your friend to know that you actually want to die by suicide or kill yourself because they're going to tell everyone else and everyone's going to try to help you. And that's going to make you feel like more of a burden, right? When everyone in your community is trying to support you, sometimes that's not always helpful. Sometimes what's helpful is to be able to know there's one person I can tell this to that won't tell anyone else. This is completely between me and them. And we can talk through and figure out a plan where I want to go with these thoughts and feelings that are coming up for me. So I think that's how I would sell it is that guess what? All your friends and family are big gossips. I'm not a gossip.
yeah.
So I mean, yeah, that's
Yeah, a trusted, safe place to
yeah.
put everything so that you can at least kind of get it off your chest and then maybe have somebody that helps you like sift through what's there
Yeah.
to kind of see it for what it really is. Because I think sometimes our own personal perspective can be skewed in a way that, like, when we ruminate in a certain direction, it's hard for
Mhm.
us to see the other side of that.
Yeah.
So I think that talking to somebody that can kind of put a spotlight on some of the things that we could address ourselves because we ultimately it's the person who's coming to you that needs to do the work. You can't do it for them. You might be able to offer them some things to say and ways to think and actions to take, but they have to do the work.
For sure. For sure.
So I think that's something too that you can say, "Oh, I can own all of this, even though I'm talking to Sterling. I have to do the work. Sterling's going to help me kind of sort through and navigate like what is in front of me, but then I have to pick it up and do something with it."
Yeah, for sure.
So you specialize in suicidal ideation,
Yeah.
disordered eating, depression, and anxiety. How are those things all connected, if they are? And
Yeah.
what do you see running underneath all of them in the clients that you're working with?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, they're all connected. I think that I like those labels because they're so mainstream. Anxiety and depression, right? I think of that just suffering, right? These low points, feeling like you can't connect with people, feeling isolated, feeling alone. And eating disorder is I mean, I think that's the out of all the mental disorders, that's the number one most likely to die by suicide is if you have an eating disorder.
Wow.
Anorexia is the most lethal. And so they're all interconnected. I think if you have an eating disorder, you also struggle with anxiety. I mean, if you're suicidal, you also struggle with depression. So they all are connected.
They're in the same little
Yeah.
dysfunctional family, you know?
Yeah.
What do you want parents, teachers, coaches, and community leaders in rural Utah to know? The people who are around young men, young women every day that may not recognize what they're seeing. Like what are some of the things that they should look out for in those rural communities in the younger people
Oh yeah.
to look out for some of these ideations and these thoughts
Yeah.
and feelings of anxiety and depression and that sort of thing.
Yeah. I think, oh my goodness. There's so many programs that have been in place to try to help with like in schools and
Mhm.
in communities with this. I think understanding the demographics has helped me a lot. So understanding that um, you're most likely to commit suicide if you're a white man, right? And also Native American populations also have a high suicide rate as well. But yeah, white males are, and then also just being aware of guns. I think sometimes we love hunting, we love all those things, and sometimes guns can be a huge thing. I mean, like I said before, like you're 7 times more likely to men are 7 times more likely to use a firearm to
Mm.
die by suicide than women.
Yeah.
So I think that's
So even
huge.
though they're everywhere, very prevalent, and most people have them in their homes, it's
Yeah,
just keeping them in a place where someone might not have as easy of
yeah,
access to it if they're in a certain state of mind where they're struggling with something.
yeah. I
Is
think
that what we're
also
saying?
normalizing asking for help and asking for help that's confidential and private that no one else knows about.
Yeah,
Because I think the hardest thing about in rural areas is once you tell one person about these
yeah.
suicidal thoughts you have,
Everybody knows.
everyone's gonna know, everyone's gonna try to help you.
Yeah,
And sometimes that just makes you feel more like a burden
and more
and
overwhelmed.
more
Yeah.
overwhelmed and more likely to go for it. So I think confidential space is important.
If someone's listening right now and they're struggling quietly in that place,
Hmm.
or they don't think anyone would understand, or they don't think, we're talking rural here, they think if they tell someone, it's going to feel more burdensome, or everyone's going to know, and
Hmm.
that's going to feel more burdensome. Burdensome.
Burdensome.
Burdensome.
Yeah, there you go.
Burdensome. um, what would you say to those people who feel like they don't? I guess I think you just kind of said that, just finding someone, like finding a therapist, because a therapist can't say anything, right? They can't go tell all the neighbors in the whole
Yeah,
town. And if you're rural and you're doing using telehealth, even more safe, I would think.
yeah.
In their
And
minds,
even
right?
a religious leader or something. Sometimes the religious leaders don't know how to handle it, right? So, um, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on to your message. So you're 1 year away from finishing your training, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Or so.
I'm seeing clients as a therapist, but yeah.
Yeah. What kind of therapist do you want to be? And what do you want your clients to feel when they walk out of a session with you?
Yeah, I wanna feel like they don't think I'm an expert trying to teach them something. I want them to feel like they're leading the conversation and that they feel safe with me. Yeah.
Yeah, that they can trust you with big heavy things,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
What do you know about mental health and human suffering that you wish had been taught to you or to the people around you when you were a teenager?
That's a hard one.
Because you kind of mentioned that you were put into therapy and you didn't know why, and that there were other things going on. If you're comfortable talking about it, like
Yeah.
what are some
I'm
things
trying to
that
think what I wish I would have known. I think, oh my goodness.
I think you kind of talked about it too, because it's kind of the reason you went into therapy.
Yeah, I think it's similar to maybe a lot of what you talk about on your platforms, which is domestic abuse. And I think that it kind of comes in waves of like realizing maybe certain relationship certain relationships weren't healthy or normal, and understanding maybe like how I coped as a teenager. I've used humor a lot to cope. And so understanding that I think would have been helpful as a teenager.
That your humor wasn't just you trying to be funny, it was you trying to manage
Yeah,
certain situations that were uncomfortable. You
for
didn't know what to
sure.
do.
Yeah, manage relationships and
Yeah.
situations
Yeah.
for sure.
I mean, that makes sense.
Mhm.
I default to humor too.
Yeah.
It's just, I like being happy. And so maybe the humor helps me feel a little happy in a not so happy situation sometimes. Or
Yeah.
like my dad was the kind of guy. I remember on my wedding day, we were walking down this path to where we were getting married. It was like at this park and it had this big path that we had to walk down. And he
Mhm.
cracked jokes the whole time because he didn't want to cry
Mhm.
as we were walking down. And he wasn't trying to avoid feelings, but he was just trying to like hold it together, I think, in the moment. But that's like maybe I learned that from my dad is just like, let's just make it funny because I go to the hospital and I'm practically dying and I'm cracking jokes because I'm trying not to feel so horrible in that moment, you know? And I end up feeling it and I end up, dealing with all of it. But in the moment, sometimes I think the humor, I want to lighten the mood. I don't want everyone to be sad around me, I think.
I think you'd be surprised how often when someone's describing a traumatic event in therapy, they laugh because it's just like the only way to cope with all that suffering
Yeah.
and pain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some people laugh in the midst of something traumatic too, because they're just like, I don't know what to do. And so
Mhm.
I'm just going to laugh because I don't know what else to do.
Mhm.
And so that might look insensitive to other people, but I think I think we're showing people this is a response, just like someone crying, laughing is the same kind of response. You're just kind of, hey, don't know what to do here.
Yeah,
Laugh or cry.
nervous laugh. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
If your classmate who died could know that their loss led you here to this work, to this conversation, to everything that you're building, what do you think that they would say to you?
Oh my goodness. I don't know. I wasn't like super close with them. I really wasn't. But
Okay, I have another question.
yeah.
Because I had this question earlier, but I didn't ask it. Like, why do you think he came to you and said this?
Oh yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah. I don't like that question. I think
You can pass. I'm not
I
going to
think he
make you
knew I
answer
was a safe
anything.
person. I really do. I think he knew that I was someone that could hold that information, and I think he knew that I probably wouldn't do anything with it. Um, and I don't know. I wonder if it was a cry for help. Because I don't know if he told anyone else this,
Yeah.
right? But it almost is an honor because he chose me to know, but also it's kind of it's a weight because I wonder if there's something I could have done to
Yeah.
prevent
That's
it.
a hard thing not to think, though, in that
Yeah.
situation. When somebody says that to you, and you, like you said, we weren't best friends, we weren't super close, but he said this to me.
Yeah.
And was he hoping I said something? Was he hoping I did something? Like, I would have the same thoughts. And I think that's just human nature, when hindsight, something has happened, you're like, Was I supposed to do something with that? So did you feel a lot of guilt when that happened?
I didn't. I think it was just kind of a blur, and I was able to accept that it happened. I didn't in the moment, I didn't really feel like I could have prevented it.
Yeah.
But I know everyone's story is different,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
Yeah.
and like I think maybe if he had been closer to you, you might have had that feeling.
Mhm.
Maybe it was because you weren't so close to him, you felt like, oh well, I couldn't have done anything.
Mhm.
Where if it was like your best friend that came to you with this and then that happened, it would feel very different.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I want to add that's also why some people don't want to ask for help, is because they don't want someone to hold that.
Yeah.
They don't want anyone to know, you
Yeah.
know?
Burden.
Yeah, and just that feeling of wanting to disappear. I mean, everyone has that feeling at some point in their life, just wanting to fall asleep and not wake up, because life is hard. But it's when it's every single day for a long time,
Yeah.
it becomes just like normal,
Heavy.
and you feel numb and
Yeah.
don't think about it.
Yeah. What's your message to the young man in rural Utah
Small towns, yeah.
uh, suffering right now and would never in a million years consider asking for help?
I don't know if there's something you can say to convince someone not to. Really, it
Yeah.
really is a choice, you
Yeah.
know? And I don't know if there's a message that will really help someone, like a message of like, don't do it, don't die by suicide, don't kill yourself. Like there's not a message like that that could help, but I think a message of that turning for help can be a strength, I think
Mhm.
is the message that can help a lot of suffering, turning to people for connection instead of isolating. Because we live in such an isolated, complex world, right? I mean,
I think COVID brought a lot of that out too.
yeah.
I know, I really do. I think that we've
Yeah.
struggled since COVID. And it's been like, you would think that once everything stopped and we'd just go back to how we were. But I think it was so, it was kind of traumatizing, I think.
Yeah.
None of us have ever experienced anything like that ever before.
Mhm.
Our parents haven't even experienced anything like that ever.
Yeah.
So it's like so foreign to the world that
Mhm.
when it happened and it was global, we were all just like kind of in shock, I think.
Yeah, the mental health, there's a massive mental health spike, and just now it's been slowly going down.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So 6 years later, here we are barely getting back to some sort of normal, which is different than it would have been.
mhm.
Now we have this COVID thing that happened. But I think that like getting back to community, getting back to hanging out with in
Mhm.
groups of people, getting out to going out to dinner with a bunch of friends, like those kinds of things that we all used to do all the time and never even thought twice about it.
Mhm.
Like now I think number one, we appreciate more that we can go out to eat with our friends anywhere without a mask and without all this other stuff going on. But two, like we feel that community again. We feel a part of something again. We feel like we matter to somebody or, whatever it is that makes somebody feel isolated. I think it's getting back to some of those things that we lost during COVID is going to be a
Mhm.
real big part of helping mental health too.
For sure.
Sterling, you came here with something to share, and we just are so grateful that you chose our podcast, Irene Cares, to share that with us. And it's an important message, and I'm so grateful that you're here to share the things that you shared. Before I let you go, I want you to tell everyone where they can find you and how they can reach out if they or someone they love needs support.
Yeah. I mean, you can just reach out you can DM me on Instagram or Facebook, or my psychology today. You can look, I'm a therapist on psychology today. So feel free to reach out. And I actually respond pretty quick. So,
So, do you give it the exact link to the website you're talking about?
oh my goodness. If you typed in psychology today,
Okay.
Sterling Brown, St. George, Utah, I will pop up.
Okay. Google
So
you.
I look like this. Yeah. So
Actually, in your pictures, you look about 15. No, just kidding.
15 years old. Yeah, I know. No, I actually look so much younger than I am. I'm 26. No.
Yeah, you don't look 26. That's a good thing, though, right?
Yeah. I guess. Maybe it'll help me when I'm like,
Maybe when you're 50 years old,
yeah.
like me. So, a way back counseling, is that where you are?
Yeah, I'm there.
A waybackcounseling.com/.
That's Sterling.
Sterling.
Yeah, and you can also find me on Psychology Today, or just message me. Yeah, that's
Yep.
probably
And
the best
then
way.
Instagram, what's your Instagram handle?
It's actually Sterling Brown is me.
Sterling Brown is
I
me.
think I made it when I was 14.
That sounds
Yeah.
right. That sounds about
Yeah.
right.
So
Oh, thank you, Sterling, for being here. If
yeah.
today's conversation moved you, or if you know somebody who is struggling, always reach out and make sure that they know that they're not a burden and that you're always there to help them. Help them heal, help them have a voice, help them to talk through some of their things. Community is so important, and just reaching out can do more than you even realize. So take care of the loved ones around you, and always remember that God loves you, and so do we. God bless.